In the depths of war, while the world's attention was focused on the men battling on the front lines, there existed a group of warriors whose stories were buried in the rubble, their heroism unnoticed by history's eyes. They were women whose courage defied the expectations of the time and whose strength carried them through unimaginable trials. These were the hidden warriors of World War II, the unsung female heroes whose stories remained largely untold. Until now, they were nurses, spies, soldiers, resistance fighters, and everyday women who rose to the challenge of a war they had never asked for. Their courage, resilience, and determination would go on to shape the very fabric of history, even as they fought in the shadows, never seeking the spotlight. Behind the whispers of battlefields and the chaos of war, these women fought their own silent battles with unparalleled bravery. And yet, what they did was hardly acknowledged, for their place in the story of World War II was written in the margins. It was a time when the world seemed to be tearing itself apart. And yet, in the midst of the violence, fear, and destruction, these women held fast to something deeper within themselves. They were often relegated to the background, their roles reduced to the support they gave to men who were considered the true warriors of war. But what they did behind the lines, behind the scenes, is a tale of strength, defiance, and survival. With every letter they smuggled, they displayed a resilience that would make even the hardest of soldiers pause. Their contribution was crucial, and yet it was so often erased, forgotten, or overshadowed. These women, these hidden warriors, would soon emerge from the shadows, their stories no longer silenced, and under the oppressive rule of occupying forces, they fought and survived, their identities often obscured by the needs of war. The air was thick with tension, the sound of distant gunfire, the rumble of tanks. Yet there was something else in the air, to a quiet defiance, the whisper of rebellion, even when they were told they were invisible. In the shadows where they had once hidden, these women found their voices. They would rise, one by one, and their voices would be heard. Who infiltrated enemy lines? They were spies who disguised themselves as everyday citizens to sabotage operations. Some were captured, some escaped, and some made the ultimate sacrifice. But all of them did so with a resolve that came from deep within their souls. Yet she never imagined this moment would reshape her destiny. The courage of these women was not born out of a thirst for recognition, but out of necessity, out of love for their families, for their country, and for the world they dreamed of seeing again after the war. They fought, not because they were asked to. The camps, the underground movements, the secret missions, all of it seemed insurmountable. These women were not invincible, but all of them shared one thing: an unbreakable spirit. Behind the ruins of bombed-out cities, behind enemy lines, they were the ones who kept the flame of resistance alive. It was the secret of the women who fought with everything they had, who made the impossible possible and never asked for anything in return. When faced with torture, betrayal, or death, each whisper of rebellion was shaping the course of history. What they discovered next would shake even their commanders. They were more than just women caught in the whirlwind of war. They were catalysts of change, silent warriors who, in the end, would not be forgotten. But their impact was undeniable. When the forces of tyranny threatened to crush every last shred of hope, they fought with their hearts, with their minds, with a fierce will to survive and to protect their loved ones. They fought not for fame, but for the future, for the generations to come. They were the silent warriors. They gave everything for a cause greater than themselves. And when the war ended, they disappeared into history. Their story is never fully told, but as the years passed, their silence began to speak louder. They were the unsung heroes of World War II. And then, in a moment of reflection, as the world looked back on the war and began to recognize the forgotten heroes, these women's stories began to resurface. The quiet warriors, the ones who had fought for their survival and the survival of those around them, were finally given the recognition they had long deserved. What they had done in the shadows, in silence, was now being celebrated. Their bravery was no longer buried beneath the weight of history. It was shining brightly for the world to see. These women, who had been hidden warriors for so long, were now stepping into the light, their voices ringing out with pride, their spirits unbroken by time. As we look back on these women, we are reminded of their strength, their resilience, and their unyielding spirit. They were more than just survivors. They were the beating heart of resistance, the quiet force that helped turn the tide of war, but in the generations of women who came after them, and for the freedom they fought for, but always powerful, and their legacy will never be forgotten.